From now on, you'll be the greatest ace pilot this war will ever know.
The rituals worked! Ace Combat 8 Wings of Theve was announced at the 2025 Game Awards and is scheduled to be released in 2026. A new Ace Combat game also means lots of new aces who will be taking to the Ace Combat skies for the first time. So, in preparation for Ace Combat 8's release later this year, I wanted to take a page out of Tomcat 171's and Ace Combat Fans book and make a guide for any new players looking to get into the franchise. Unlike Tomcat 171's and Ace Combat Fans videos though, this will not be an in-depth multi-hour breakdown going over every facet of how aerial warfare in this universe works. Instead, my video is going to be more of a general quick start guide. I do strongly recommend Tomcat 171's and Ace Combat Fans' Ace Combat 101 videos for those of you looking for more in-depth tips after this video though. With that being said, Nuggets, it's time to take to the skies. Welcome to Ace Combat. Real quick, before we begin, the gameplay you'll see throughout this video will be a mix of different Ace Combat games. However, the game that I would recommend any newcomers to pick up first is Ace Combat 7 Skies Unknown. This is due to its ease of access and the fact it's a very solid entry to begin with. And then after you play through 7, if you're feeling it, you can check out some of the other titles in the series. What even is Ace Combat, I hear you asking? Ace Combat is an arcade flight action video game franchise that got its start back in 1995 with, well, Ace Combat, or as it was known outside of Japan, Air Combat. The games would be called Ace Combat worldwide, starting with Ace Combat 2. You know how we imagine aerial warfare to be like in our minds? Pilots getting up in each other's faces in a massive furball, tunnel runs, pilots doing flips and spins to get on each other's six, things like that? That doesn't happen at all in real life. Most aerial warfare in real life is slower paced with beyond visual range being the meta. Ace Combat looks at what we imagine aerial warfare to be like in our minds and goes, what if that's how aerial warfare primarily worked in this universe? In this world, things like laws of physics are merely a suggestion. You can pull double-digit G-forces and the pilot you're flying as will shrug it off like it's nothing. Same thing with your plane, it'll just eat those G-forces like a delicious Domino's handmade pan pizza with pepperoni, bacon, and chicken on it. You know how planes in real life can carry only a few pieces of ordnance at a time? Ace Combat's planes must have mini 3D printers inside them because planes here can carry hundreds of that ordnance. Whenever you use some of it, replacements will show up a few seconds later. Another thing about the Ace Combat universe is that wars happen very frequently. Oh, and the planet got its shit rocked by an asteroid at one point. In 1994, this rock that was floating throughout space known as Ulysses felt like doing a little trolling and began making its way to Earth. Note, if you look on places like the Ace Combat wiki, you may see the name Strange Reel being thrown around. Strange Reel is the term used to describe the alternate reality Earth most Ace Combat games take place on. A strange but real world. The planet itself is still called Earth, but it's a different version of Earth, if that makes any sense. In 1996, the world was made aware that a giant rock in space would clap their ass cheeks 6 ways from Sunday in a few years, which prompted the construction of things like underground shelters and Stonehenge, a set of anti-asteroid railguns. When July 1999 came, Jay Schlatt arrived right on time. Ulysses arrived right on time. Although humanity was saved from going extinct in a world-ending apocalyptic event, various nations who got hit were left devastated. Economic crises, refugee crises, resource crises, things like that. Okay, now that the stage is set, how does it feel to play an Ace Combat game? These games are the farthest that you can get from flight sim territory. In something like DCS, you essentially have to get a bachelor's degree in aviation science and study a particular aircraft as if you were actually in the Air Force, Navy, Army, whichever branch with your assigned aircraft. In comparison, Ace Combat is a pick-up-and-play experience. That said, if you've never played an arcade flight action game like this before, there is a learning curve that'll need to be mastered. But it's nowhere near as big as in something like a simulator. For the record, I'm not trashing sim games when saying this. This is purely a comparison thing that I'm doing here. So what actually happens when you play a mission? First, you'll attend a briefing. Briefings are crucial for you to not only get an idea of what the overall mission objective is, but also so that you can make the best informed decision on which plane and weaponry you want to take into battle. When you go to pick your aircraft, you'll first have to choose which specific plane you want to sortie with. planes in Ace Combat are divided into 3 main types, with there being an extra type or 2 in specific games. The main 3 that you'll see are Fighter, Multi-Role, and Attacker. Fighters are your air-to-air jets, aircraft like the F-16C Fighting Falcon, or more accurately the F-16 Viper, F-15C Eagle, F-14D Super Tomcat, and F-22 Raptor to give some examples. They have the best air-to-air stats, allowing for faster lock-ons against aerial threats, along with usually having great speed and mobility, 2 very crucial stats when it comes to dogfighting. This usually comes at the cost of your defense, aka how much punishment your aircraft can take before you get shot down, and sometimes your stability too, aka how much you'll need to fight your aircraft to stay on course when performing maneuvers. They also aren't as effective against ground and naval threats since their weaponry is primarily air-to-air focused. That being said, some fighters can carry air-to-ground ordnance. Multi-roles are the jack-of-all-trades jets. Aircraft like the F-15E Strike Eagle, Rafale M, FA-18F Super Hornet, and the Gripen E to give some examples. These aircraft are great to use when a mix of air and ground/naval targets are present, allowing you to swiftly go from fighting one enemy type to another without much compromise. Their weaponry is usually a mix of air-to-air, ground, and sea ordnance. The only real weakness with multi-roles is that because these are jack-of-all-trades aircraft, they're masters of none. Multi-roles are also ideal for anti-ship combat specifically, since fighters and attackers can carry air-to-ground ordnance, but rarely are they able to carry things like long-range anti-ship missiles. Attackers are your ground pounders. Aircraft like the A-10 Thunderbolt, F-16XL, F-117 Nighthawk, and FB-22 Strike Raptor to give some examples. They're usually the slowest aircraft in terms of speed and mobility, and they will suffer in air-to-air combat compared to a fighter or multi-role, but they make up for all of that by usually having incredible stability and some of the best defense stats. It also goes without saying that lock-on speeds for ground targets are the fastest with attackers. Their weaponry is primarily air-to-ground focused, allowing you to get the most out of those strafe runs you'll be doing. Once in a blue moon though, attackers can carry air-to-air ordnance. Those are the main 3, but like I said earlier, you may run into a couple other aircraft types during your playtime depending on what game you're playing. Jammer aircraft like the EA-18G Growler with, well, jammers to disrupt enemy lock-on weaponry. Bombers like the B-1 Lancer and B-2 Spirit, which can drop a massive amount of ordnance on ground targets, and helicopters like the AH-64 Apache, which can use their ability to hover in place to keep up sustained fire on ground targets. Bombers and helicopters in particular are limited to Assault Horizon, the worst Ace Combat game ever, the one you need to steer clear from as your very first Ace Combat experience. And Infinity as well for the bombers, but you can't play that game anymore, so yeah. One thing that's super important to note, not all aircraft in a particular category will behave the same. The MiG-31 Foxhound is a great example of this. It's a fighter that's really fast with a good air-to-air stat, but its maneuverability is low. This is more so an interceptor meant to engage targets from a distance or with hit-and-run attacks, not a plane meant for dogfighting. This thing is called a flying brick for a reason. The FB-22 Strike Raptor is another great example. Compared to its peers, it's got a great speed stat while still retaining the other traits of an attacker, such as good defense and its weaponry being primarily air-to-ground focused. So, pay attention to the stats to see if a particular plane would be a good choice either for the mission at hand or your personal preference. Okay, now it's time to introduce special weapons. Along with the cannon and standard missiles each plane comes with, you're allowed to take one special weapon into battle with you. Though, it's looking like you may be able to take more than one special weapon in Ace Combat 8. These special weapons, as their name suggests, have special properties in exchange for more limited ammo in comparison to your standard missiles. Multi-lock-on missiles, super fast high-velocity missiles, unguided bombs, fuel-air explosive bombs, portable nukes, mini railguns, lasers, you get the idea. Depending on what Ace Combat game you're playing, parts may come into the loadout equation too. Parts are modifiers for your aircraft that can improve stats. You only have a limited number of part slots available, so it's up to you on how you want to modify your aircraft of choice. Alright, you've been briefed and you got your plane tailored how you want it for the mission ahead. The only thing left to do is take off. To reiterate what I said at the start, this is not going to be an in-depth guide looking at every facet of how combat works in these games. However, I will still give the general basics, and then if you're looking for more after this, you can check out the Ace Combat 101 videos I mentioned earlier. Targets in Ace Combat are divided into 3 types: air, ground, and naval. Looking at air targets first, these can range from things like transport planes, which are easy to shoot down, all the way to advanced prototype fighters, which are the most difficult to shoot down. The best possible angle that you can get is directly behind the enemy. This will give you the highest possible chances of scoring a hit, whether it be with your missiles or your cannon. Perpendicular angles of attack will rarely work with missiles, but can work with your cannon if you lead your shots. Head-on attacks can also work, but be wary of the enemy launching a missile or firing some cannon rounds at you as well. If an enemy fires a missile, turn and evade. Focus on just evading whenever you see and hear that missile alert. As you gain more experience, that's when you can start to experiment with getting a little ballsy, seeing if you can squeeze out a missile or two at your target before taking evasive action, trying to outrun a missile once you get a sense of how long they last in a particular game, things like that. Another important thing to keep note of: in most Ace Combat games, you don't have access to flares. The only 3 games that let you use flares are Assault Horizon, which again you should avoid at all costs, Northern Wings, and 7. No kill is worth risking your life for. If you see a missile alert and you see that a missile is about to hit you, but you're about to have an enemy within lock-on range or you're lined up for a cannon shot, break off and try again when you're not on the verge of dying. Getting greedy can be a surprisingly common reason for deaths in these games. On the aerial enemy difficulty scale, on the harder end are stealth aircraft. Typically found towards the latter half of Ace Combat games, enemies flying stealth aircraft like the Raptor or F-35 Lightning II will be a bit harder to detect. In Ace Combat games, you can only detect a stealth aircraft whenever the nose of your aircraft is facing them. If the enemy stealth aircraft is to your sides or rear, they won't show up on your radar, meaning you can be in for a nasty surprise if you're not careful. Moving on to ground targets, most of the time they're akin to grunts. You've got targets that can literally do no harm to you, such as trucks, APCs, and tanks. Well, most of the time anyway.
I can't. I've got my hands full too.
And then you've got targets like AA guns and SAMs that, while not the hardest targets ever to destroy, you shouldn't get complacent around them either. Movement is your best friend here. Keep your speed up and don't fly in a straight line if you can help it to make yourself that much harder of a target to hit. Be mindful of your angle of attack and your speed whenever you decide to do a strafe run. You don't want to carry too much speed with a poor angle of attack and contribute to the ground's perfect KD ratio when it comes to its everlasting battle against pilots. Sea targets are a little different here. You've got different types of ships, such as frigates, destroyers, Aegis ships, and aircraft carriers to name a couple of them. When it comes to threats against you, by far the #1 priority should be taking out Aegis ships first. Not only do they have multiple SAMs on board, but said SAMs usually have enhanced properties such as increased target tracking when compared to SAMs from the ground. All the other ships usually have at least an AA gun on board, if not multiple, so you should still take care to not get too close to those ships either. It should go without saying that long-range attacks are the best way to deal with these threats. You'll also notice that the hulls of these ships are their own separate targets from the AA guns and SAMs on board. You'll want to target and destroy those hulls of the ships every single time. Don't bother destroying the weapons of a ship individually first, as whenever you destroy the hull of one, its weaponry will be knocked out as well. Now on to some more general tips for combat. Just because you may be flying in an aircraft that has a high defense stat, that doesn't mean you should just start flying carelessly taking hits. Sure, on the easier difficulties, you can have multiple missiles and cannon rounds hit you and you'll just shrug those off like you're Armstrong from Metal Gear Rising. But on the harder difficulties, you're gonna lose huge chunks of your health if you're just flying around carelessly. As a result, you should prioritize not getting hit in the first place as much as possible. In some missions, there will be a return line. You can cross this line during longer missions in order to refill your ammo, swap out your special weapon if needed, and make repairs if needed. It's important to note though that on the harder difficulties in these games, while you still get an ammo resupply and you can still swap your special weapon if needed, you don't get repairs. In each mission, you'll receive a letter rank signaling how well you did, C being the lowest and S being the highest. The specific letter rank conditions vary by game and missions within said game. Some games and missions will ask you to complete a mission as fast as possible in order to get an S rank, while others will ask you to wipe the radar clean in order to get an S rank. The higher the rank, the more credits you typically get that can be used on buying aircraft, weapons, and miscellaneous things like parts. Don't get discouraged if you're not achieving S ranks right out the gate. Those S ranks will come with enough playtime and practice. If you're having a good time with Ace Combat 7 and you want to try out some other games after your playthrough of it, you'll quickly find out that each Ace Combat game has something unique, something that makes it stand out from the other entries. In Ace Combat X Skies of Deception, you can pick and choose your missions, and the enemy will react accordingly, giving you different variants of missions depending on how you progress through the campaign. In Ace Combat 6 Fires of Liberation, you've got large-scale battles with multiple smaller fights going on all at the same time. In Ace Combat 0 The Balkan War, you've got the Ace style gauge to determine what kind of a pilot you are, and those are only a couple of examples. There are plenty more gameplay mechanics that make each game unique. I'd strongly recommend giving the other games a shot if you end up enjoying 7. And that'll do it for this video. I really hope you give the Ace Combat franchise a shot if you haven't done so already, and I really hope you enjoy it if you do. If you're an Ace Combat veteran and you've got some other beginner tips that I may have missed, feel free to share them in the comments, because I'm pretty sure I may have missed a thing or two. I hope to see you in the skies when Ace Combat 8 Wings of Theve officially launches.